Jennifer is the Senior Regional Manager at Common Sense Education. As a former elementary educator, Jennifer has over 20 years of experience in education. Jennifer designs and delivers high-quality professional development opportunities for educators across the country. She spotlights thought leaders by creating and moderating conversations on timely topics relevant to digital teaching and learning. She holds a bachelor's degree in elementary education and a master's degree in educational leadership. Please welcome Jennifer. And I'm Linda, your webinar facilitator. I'll be behind the scenes making sure that everything runs smoothly, as well as interacting with you in the chat. So let's get started.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, friends. I'm so happy to be here today. Excited that most of you are joining us from near and some from far. So thank you, thank you. Let's get started with navigating the digital age, essential media skills for today's digital world. And so let's begin. I had a really nice warm welcome. Thank you, Linda. I'm excited to be here. Some of the things we're going to be covering today is why is this topic in trying times and some tricky environments. And some of us are even teaching in some polarized environments. And so how can we have these conversations in a smart, responsible, and ethical way? Promoting civil discourse, right? And making it some of your overall classroom culture for those of you who are thinking about this on the daily basis. Lessons and activities. I want to showcase some of our really cool activities. Some are low-hanging fruit you can try tomorrow. Others might take some deeper thought and planning, but I feel like there's going to be something for everyone when you leave here today. And then last but not least, we want to make sure we're bringing in the family component as well. Families are just important in this conversation as well. So we want to make sure you're equipped with some of the content that would help families navigate these conversations as well. So without further ado, I'm going to start with a question. So we have 3 headlines here on the screen that you'll see, and I want you to read through all 3 of these and give me a 1, 2, or 3. Which one is true? So Japan finally abandons microwave ovens by 2025. The new iPhone will come with holographic keyboard and projector. Australia to introduce 33 different genders on passports. What are we thinking? Which one is true? 1, 2, or 3? Anybody have any thoughts? 1, 2, or 3? I see a 2. Thank you, Nicole. Patricia, thank you. Hoping for 2. Thank you, thank you. Wouldn't that be amazing? Oh, wow. 2 is a popular one. I don't know if it's popular because we hope it happens or if it's popular because it could possibly be true. All right, we can stop playing this now. Unfortunately, I kind of tricked you today, and none of them are true. They are all fake. One is very interesting, right, Don? Yes, I agree. But the idea here is how easy it is to be convinced, right, that something can be true. And some of that is all tied into what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you for participating in that fun little activity. And I'm sorry if you felt tricked, but we'll move on. All right. So if you're not familiar with Common Sense Education, we have K-12 digital citizenship content, and here are our 6 themes. And so all of these themes sort of circle around the foundation of the rings of responsibilities. And what do those responsibilities look like when it's ourselves, the responsibilities we have to our community and across the world. And so everything we share, post, consume, create, right? How does that impact our overall self, our community, and our world? And so all of these things here you see: finding media balance and well-being. There's digital footprint, cyberbullying, privacy and security, relationships and communication. And then last but not least, what we're here for today is a focus on the news and media literacy. And so this is all content that starts in kindergarten and goes all the way through 12th grade. So I'm going to kind of build upon like the littlest learners all the way up to the biggest learners. I did notice we are more in the middle school, high school with our audience today. So just bear with me. I think it's important to showcase how this all scaffolds and how, starting as early as kindergarten really does build these foundations to create good habits, skills, and dispositions for our digital learners. And so in our K2 curriculum, we have digital characters. This one happens to be Head. So say hello to Mr. Head here. Mr. Head represents news and media literacy and how we should, use our head when we're online, right? Make good choices, think about whether or not it's true, pause before we post. And so our video series has different characters that represents different skills. So as early as K1 and 2, we can introduce to Mr. Head, and he tells us all about, seeing is not always believing. And each one of our videos are really short and sweet. We see these really being implemented in morning meeting, different routines throughout the K2 classrooms to get kids warmed up and excited about learning about how to be a good online citizen. Each one of the characters also comes with handouts and coloring pages. So you can see here when we meet, Mr. Head, it's all about pausing in the moment, thinking, fact checking, all of those different things to be a good digital citizen. And so what are ways to check if something you see online is true? And that's the question that they ask with the writing prompt. All of that information and the answer is covered in the video, which makes it really fun. Kids can color. And then how do we know something we see or hear is true? And so Head taught us to ask questions to discover what's true. We can't believe everything that we see online. So asking questions is and being curious are those first steps to finding out if it's true or not. And so the idea here is the Common Sense Chronicle, and they can create their own mythical, unbelievable, or mythical creature. And do you think people would believe it's real? And so getting kids to create and, think about how these things can look when they are navigating our digital spaces. Along the lines of meeting Mr. Head in the K2 space, we also want to showcase some of the other news and media literacy lessons that you can see in 4th grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade, and 5th grade. And so all the standards alignments are there as well. So seeing is believing. We get into the creator's rights and responsibility, the reading the news online, and you won't believe this. And so those are some of the lesson titles that we go deeper with some of this content and getting kids to understand how to, read the internet, basically, right? And today I wanted to showcase the essential news and media literacy skills for students. So if you've used our lessons in the past, you're going to notice some of them have just been curated into this lesson collection. But as we get into the older grade bands, you're going to notice some new lessons. And so this is 3rd, 4th, and 5th, even 6th grade, all here, all 45 minutes. And the other cool thing about these lessons is we have a pacing guide because 45 minutes can feel long. And you may want to break some of these conversations out into a day or two. Because some of these dilemmas, the digital dilemmas that we think about and have conversations about are really powerful and can be impactful for your students. So creating those spaces for them to have these conversations can be really important. So reading the news online, this happens to be one of our lessons in 5th grade. So now we're kind of moving into upper elementary. Reading the news online, we have a video here and some discussion questions. And so as they read, the videos are all under 3 minutes. So what are some of the discussions you could have around reading news online? How do you think knowing more about the parts of an online newsletter can help you? And so this is really dissecting a news article. And what I love about this lesson is we have some example headlines. So you have some handouts within the lesson that you can showcase. You can upload this stuff into an LMS for learning. You can print out handouts. But the idea here is to label the news article. And so first and foremost, just going over all the parts of it, what things you should look for. The headline, the byline, the URL. These are all sort of maybe even some new vocabulary words for our students too. So kind of labeling a whole idea of this page and building up those skills on how to read an article, what to look for in terms of credibility. Sound good? Make sense? And you could do this in a variety of ways, right? Obviously, this is the handout where they can cut the the tags out and then obviously glue them. I've had teachers do this electronically, where you kind of drag and drop. This is also a really great bulletin board in some ways, right? Where it's always in a visual of labeling the different components of an article. And then each one of our lessons is really great because we have an engaging families component. And so, today we talked about how to understand a news article, what things to look for in order to make it feel more credible and understanding whether it's true or not. And so these are just really quick family activities. Again, you can print these out, send them home. You can put them in your parent portal, house them in their LMS where families can call them up and have conversations throughout the week around what's being taught and talked about. Any questions so far? How we doing? How we feeling? Good stuff? Is everyone feeling like this is really nice content to have as a foundational piece? Any questions, please throw in the chat there. We're happy to help navigate these conversations in your classroom. So this next one, we're going to move a little further up into middle school, finding credible news. And even though this comes out in the middle school scope and sequence, I understand finding credible news is going to be dropping probably even earlier, right? So this could even drop down to 5th and 4th grade as we think about talking to our students about this type of information. And so here are the learning objectives for this lesson. Learn reasons people put false or misleading information on the internet, criteria for differentiating fake news from credible news, and even just practicing and evaluating this information, right? The more practice, the more we understand what to look for. Here are some vocabulary words that are introduced throughout this lesson. So credible, and why might information you find on the internet not be true? And so we think about introducing the term editorials, satire, and hoaxes so that students start to understand this vocabulary, what it means and what it looks like in order to be able to apply it. So when they're consuming information in digital spaces, they can sort of have these things in the back of their mind to understand whether or not it's true. Evaluate. Bias is another big one. We'll get into that later in the grade bands, but bias obviously comes up not only within news and media literacy, but also within AI literacy. And so we have to make sure that we are, talking to our students about these conversations and these topics and these ways of navigating so that they have a better understanding. And so here's fake news. This is where they're taking almost the labels that they learned prior, and there are different articles that we give you within the lessons. So you don't have to go out and search for different lessons or articles or, sample things for the kids to look at. We have them all included in the lesson plan. And so you can go out, pull these up, put the kids in groups, have them read it, analyze the source, and kind of look for stuff that really makes it feel like it could be held true. And so getting them to analyze the sources are really important. And so as we get into some of these conversations, I think, the middle or the elementary school is pretty skill-based, right? It's really just about learning these skills and how to do it. Some of the dispositions come into the play a little bit on, how do we react? How do we consume? How do we pause before we, post something to think about whether or not is it okay to post? But as we get into the upper middle school and high school, some of our conversations can really be tricky. And so whether it means we have different perspectives on something, whether it means we're going to agree to disagree, these conversations play a big role in personality and values and backgrounds, right? We're humans that come from all different spaces. But as educators having these tough conversations around news and media literacy, I think it's really important to think about establishing your classroom culture, a place where everyone can learn from each other, setting up safe space statements. Does anybody have a safe space statement right now, or have you tried them? Sort of maybe similar to like setting up classroom expectations in terms of digital learning, but taking it maybe a step further. And how do we create these space statements where everyone has a voice, everyone's perspective is respected, and how do we learn to disagree with somebody without using hate speech or being mean? Just curious, does anyone came across any of that? Or have you tried anything? I have an example in our, let me see here. Can you see that? I'm sharing my screen. This one here, I'll put it in the chat for you, Linda, if that's okay. I'll put it in the chat. This one comes out of New Jersey. This one is a really nice one, just to give you some language on things to consider, and community agreements when you have these, and also keeping in mind that they're best created with the students in the classroom. So make sure you have a student voice component to creating these safe community agreements to have these conversations. Sound good? Sentence starters. Thank you, Dawn. Yes, that allow disagree, agree built in. I love that. Thank you for sharing, Dawn. That's a wonderful idea. I love that you're starting to have these conversations and making it feel like a space, because this is definitely not something that comes overnight, right? These are spaces that you have to create and cultivate over time. And so that example, I hope, will help you if you haven't gotten into any of those yet. And then calling in and calling out. Has anyone heard of these types of conversations? You know, we know as educators, because we want to make sure we know it all, but we don't always know it all, and that's okay. So we have to acknowledge that we can make mistakes. They will be made, and we'll learn from those mistakes. So these two terms, you know, when we know better, we do better. And so calling in is an invitation to, you know, a one-to-one small group conversation to bring attention to an individual group, right? Calling out is bringing public attention to an individual or group. And so we want to be mindful of these things when we're talking about what this might look like, what this is, and how we can navigate this, and what's appropriate, what feels ethical, what feels responsible. All right. So as we move into the middle and high school, we have some more lessons. I just want to point out and showcase some of the other content that we have. This one happens to be deepfakes and democracy. And so we have some really great peer-facing videos that allow this discussion to happen, and kind of think about this particular prompt. What is deepfake technology, and what are its potential impacts for us, for our democracy, and for our world? So talk about a juicy conversation in your classroom. Am I right? This is really good content to think about. Have our students that, you know, journal. You could put, you know, groups together. You could think about different perspectives and what people take. So this one's great. The video is not very long, so it's a really nice way to introduce the word and the term deepfake, how they're created. And going back to that slide I showed earlier, right? And so fake news, whether it's questionable and credible news. And so those deep fakes can get to be very real looking, right? And believable. And so how do we constantly practice with our students around the different criteria to consider when we're thinking about fake news, credible news, headlines, etc.? And so this is a nice rubric just to kind of have around as a cheat sheet, right? And so fake news can tend to be surprising or maybe even a little unbelievable. So too good to be true. There's website is biased or not, right? Is it academic? Is it governmental? Is it, what type of organization or source is it coming from? Maybe the bio for the author. And then questionable, right? Maybe you can't find out where it's actually coming from. There's no organization tied to this particular article. Maybe the author bio or previous articles may show bias in the article. So maybe it's more of an opinion as opposed to factual. And then the last one is, the thumbs up. We give everybody the thumbs up on these articles if they meet a lot of these things, may or may not be surprising, but it makes sense. Part of a credible news source, academic, tied strongly to maybe some research, right? Author has no clear bias on the issue, and all the key points can be kind of confirmed with other sources and other websites. And so this is a really nice way to get kids to think about this in this particular way. Even adults, right? Sometimes I need a pulse check as well when it comes to reading news, right? All right. And so this video, this whole idea of deepfake, like what to know around voting and deepfakes and democracy. And so this is also pointing out a lot of examples, both, real and fake, what to consider, and kind of going back to this rubric, right? So when you watch the video with the students, you can kind of start to see how to analyze and use this rubric. So, and then the questions here too, getting kids to share their perspective. What do they pull from the video? What did they see? What resonated with them?
Do you know what a deep fake video is?
I don't know what a deep fake video is. I don't know.
I do not know what a deep fake video is.
It does sound familiar.
I mean, I would guess that a deepfake video,
when they
kind of put
someone's face onto another
version of kind of giving you the idea here. As it goes in deeper to the video, it really explains the deepfakes, where they're coming from, how they're used. And so really getting to the bottom of all of this content, so the students understand what they're looking at and what they're navigating when they're in digital spaces. How are we doing? Anybody have any questions so far? Everybody feeling good? Post comments. Yes. How are we feeling? Any questions? Okay. So far, so good. We're going to keep moving. So this last piece, not this last piece, but this next piece is we are civil communicators. This one comes out of our high school grade band. This one is all about, understanding how we communicate in civil discourse, which is really important when we think about news and media literacy. Conversation that involves respectful sharing and debate of ideas. And so this is another video. I'm going to play a couple of pieces of this video because this one I felt really resonated with me when it talks about debates, right? Showcasing different debates with people that you disagree with people you agree with, but what does that look like in online spaces, right? Face-to-face and online spaces. What does it look like in social media when people tend to be more anonymous, or you don't know the people that you're talking to or agreeing or disagreeing with? So this one comes from Cameron Caskey, who was one of the students way back when, who experienced the school shooting at Parkland School District in Florida. And so we got his story on what his experiences were with debating with a social media community. So here we go. And Linda, can you make sure we can hear it? Can you give me a thumbs up? I forgot to ask on that last one.
My name is Cameron Caskey. I am 18 years old now. After a horrible tragedy at my school, my friends and I came together to try to change the narrative of school shootings.
Our job is to protect our country, and if our elected officials aren't doing it, we have to step up.
So we came together and started a movement that was very much mobilized by social media. We were tweeting out a lot. We were using our Instagram to connect with other people and show them our messaging in a really accessible way. We didn't really plan to do a social media-based movement. We planned to do a movement, and we didn't even think about what it was like to base it in social media, because that's just how we interact with each other. And it was hard. And over the course of the year, we have been harassed online. I received countless death threats. I received very lewd images in my Instagram direct messages. We were attacked like adults, but we were not defended like kids. I have personally said things online that I'm sure I'll look at as an adult and not be very thrilled about. And a lot of us learned a lot about how we interact with each other in social media. There are a lot of things about the Parkland movement that I think are amazing, and a lot of things I regret. But one thing I can tell you that is my point of pride after all of this is that people don't remember Parkland as the city that was destroyed. People remember Parkland as the city that was strong and brave enough to stand up and say, we are not going to let you get away with another one of these. The one lesson I wish I had learned before all of this started was that the internet, while it's not real life, is becoming a part of it. It's all about remembering that the social media exists to supplement personal connections and not replace them. Behind every single account on Twitter, unless they're a bot, there's a human being typing. And that person might not realize just who they're interacting with. So you feel like it doesn't mean anything, and you feel like the people who see your comments aren't affected by it. We are now a part of this large ocean of connection, and it's now our job to be responsible. We need to hold ourselves accountable so somebody else doesn't do it for us. I used to look down on people. I put myself on a pedestal, and I encouraged a lot of my friends to do it as well. I treated people who disagreed with me like they weren't as good human beings as I was. I did a town hall debate at CNN. Emotions were high, and just a week ago, people that I loved were killed. I went up and asked my Senator, Marco Rubio, if he would stop taking money from the NRA.
Can you tell me right now that you will not accept a single donation from the NRA in the future?
And I wish I had stopped it there. But before that, I compared him to the likeness of the shooter from my school. I became part of the problem because I went up there on that debate to make another human being look bad as a human being and not as a politician. Because I wanted to go up there and embarrass him. I wanted to ruin his career. I did not do that to benefit the conversation. I did not do that to benefit our discourse as human beings. I did that to make another person look bad. I learned a lesson from it. And I'm thrilled that we went out there. I'm thrilled that we were able to make this conversation such a national topic. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to do something like that again. That's where we can stop this. We had counter protesters at all our events who were the same people who were commenting these awful things in our social media posts. When we broke the wall, when we simply just spoke to them and we became humans interacting with other humans, things changed. I was in Texas this summer. I met a man who came up to me, shook my hand and said, I went after you on Twitter a lot this year. I said some nasty things about you on the internet. But the fact that you're coming up here to this counter protest really taught me something, because I didn't know that you kids were interested in approaching this like people. He introduced me to his wife and kids who were all out there protesting us as well. And they said they don't know if they want to do this again, because when we came up and connected with them, it changed the way they look at it. That left me floored. And that's why it's so important to look at people who disagree with you like other human beings. When people disagree with you on political issues, you have to remember that approaching them like this is your enemy, it's not going to do anything for you. You have to approach everybody in bitterly social and political situations like they're part of the same world that you are. Approach a bitterly partisan topic, but come from a place where you want to learn. You learn the most from the people who disagree with you. I'm not speaking about any specific issues, but be ready to learn something. Assume that every single person you speak to knows something that you don't, because it's true. Remember that the best thing you can do as a human being is lift another person up, not knock them down. I think you're allowed to criticize my messaging without criticizing my character or who I am. These are emotional topics because they affect us. A lot of kids like me and like you believe what we believe because of our upbringing. That's okay. That's how we were raised. It's part of our character. I used to not understand how someone could disagree with me. But be ready to change people's hearts, be ready to change people's minds, and be open to changing your mind.
Okay, that was a little bit long, but I felt like it was really important to play the whole way through. So when you think about, some of the takeaways, what comes to mind? And what would be something that you would want your students to take away from this video particularly? Yes, I think that the idea here is, to learn from people who disagree with you, right? And to understand why they disagree. And it's okay to still not agree with them, but just navigating how to do these things face-to-face within a classroom with your peers and like having these perspectives, but also understanding when you should and shouldn't kind of take that next step for actionable pieces, right? Like, is it something you truly believe in, and how can you respond in a responsible, smart, respected way? And so those are some of the pieces that I hope that you would take from it. And it's really great conversation to be had in classrooms. And the whole idea here, the lesson has a really nice strategy to use. And we kind of use the strategy called COOL. So calm, right? Take a deep breath and relax before you're engaging. Open-minded. So always consider other ideas that are different from yours. Only focused on the ideas. Separate your judgments about who people are from what they're saying. And then listen, active listening, right? And so aim to understand the person's ideas, experiences, and emotions, and where it's coming from and why they might feel so strongly about something, as opposed to closing it down and just, sticking with your own thoughts. Does anyone use the cool strategy before with students? And Don, absolutely agree to disagree is still hard for kids. And so I'm wondering, have you used any types of strategies maybe related to this cool strategy, or do you even feel like this might be helpful? And Don, I have to agree with you. I think it's even hard for adults, right? Work in progress, right? We're always learning. We're always, building better digital habits and thinking about how we can react to different things, especially when it comes to the news in media. All right. So the news and media literacy, I did point out this one. I'm going to go to the next slide. This happens to be some of the content around the middle school lessons. And so this one is this just in. So how do we react to breaking news? And I think that goes back to, like, first of all, is it true? Right? I think the term breaking news is really used a lot lately, a lot now, more so than ever when you see a headline. So digging deeper before believing is always really important. So that's a really great lesson. And there's also dilemmas discussion there, so you can get your kids to talk to one another. Conspiracy theories, why they're so popular. This includes a great video from our friends over at KQED, Above the Noise. Their series offers really great peer-facing videos on such topics like conspiracy theories. So really relatable for sure. Content moderation and misinformation. And then challenging confirmation bias are two other really popular lessons right now. We're getting a lot of great feedback from those two lessons as well. So just kind of giving you a bird's eye view on some of the content that you can share and go through. And then I think this one is for the high school, even middle school too. This one kind of breaks down algorithms. So really important on ideas on how AI influence what we see online. I showed you the deep fake content, a little bit of that one, targeted ads, and breaking news broken on social media, hoaxes and fakes, and filter bubble trouble. Has anyone taught any of these lessons? Or dabbled into them at all with some of the students that you have? Okay. The next piece I wanted to show you is some of the podcasts that are out there that help guide us through news and current events for our classroom. I don't know, anybody use podcasts for learning or podcasts in your classrooms? If you don't, I would love to just suggest some cool podcasts that we have rated and reviewed over at Common Sense Media. Kid News happens to be one of our selections. And so, podcasts, bite-sized news keeps you informed of current events. Students can write about them. Writing prompts also become some of the stories, and like, why has it stuck with you? So great one to get started if you're looking for another way for kids to understand current events and get hot topics. The cool thing about these podcasts is when you go into the podcast itself on our webpage, we have this details information about the podcast, which I feel is very good for lesson planning. So it kind of tells you the average runtime for an episode. It tells you the topics. So activism, STEM, middle school. There's character strengths that are highlighted. A lot of these podcasts have a teacher resource center or a hub where you can download handouts, activities. For the younger students, there's even some coloring pages that go along with it. This other next one is Newsy Paloozy. And, age 7 and up, it really can be for anyone. I mean, you're getting this content, you're getting current events. Newsy Paloozy has this one. They run a little longer, so about 20 minutes. Communication Curiosity. Anybody do podcasting? Or have they tried podcasts in the classroom? I feel like current events could be a nice way to get that conversation started with a podcast. More ways to engage. And then I did want to talk about the families a little bit, right? We want to talk about, I did show you some of the content for families in terms of every lesson that you teach would have a family component. So family advice or a family activity that you can share. Again, going back to that posting in your portals, your LMSs, wherever parents go for information. This is really good content to share and get them thinking about how this looks like when they have conversations in the home. This one is really great too. This one is more evergreen. This is more around like media well-being, media balance at home. So this is all along with news and media literacy. So there's several different grade bands here that we have it. So you can kind of pull what yours is, and it kind of houses all of the activities in one place. Instead of kind of going lesson by lesson to search for them, I put them in here, and you can kind of go out to that website and kind of make a plan and line them up accordingly. All right, cool. All right. This one happens to be, I wanted to show you what this one is. This is a family tip sheet. And so this one has help kids spot fake news and decode media messages. So we give you 5 tips. We give families 5 tips to consider, think about. I kind of gave you one, I know that's really hard to read. So for example, explore different sides of a story. So use real life examples to help kids understand how people can view the same situation with totally different perspectives, right? And so just giving them some advice, tips, unbiased, conversation starters, so to speak, right? And just ideas on giving families how to talk about this at home. So I'm going to pause there. Does anybody have any questions about the news and media literacy essential like lesson collection, any of the lesson, the content, the materials I showed you? Any feedback, anything I can go back to? All right. You may or may not have heard it's Digital Citizenship Week this week. We celebrate Digital Citizenship Week every October, the 3rd week. We kicked off yesterday, and I wanted to just share with you, if you're not familiar, anybody on our call right now, have you participated in Digital Citizenship Week? Have you celebrated? Are you celebrating? Let us know in the chat. We would love to hear. It's this week, but keep in mind these calendars that I'm going to share with you can be rolled out any week of the year, right? And so this one happens to be the K2. Thank you. Yes, all of our lessons are comprehensive, obviously, with the slide decks. So we can obviously put those into LMSs, right? You can make a copy, you can customize these slide decks. It really is turnkey and has everything you need to be successful. And so here are what our calendars look like. Every year we put out calendars. So if you haven't gotten started with your digital citizenship plan or strategy, or you've just been dabbling, these calendars are a great way to get started. So there's a mini lesson each day of the week. There's a question of the day and a quick lesson just to kind of get everybody thinking about it. So here is the K2. 3.5, we talk about is seeing, believing. So we do have that media literacy. We're going to be celebrating that on Thursday. And one of the questions of the day there is, why do people alter digital images or videos? Which I really like that lesson too. That's a fun lesson. It's very engaging. Going into our middle, so 6.8, we start to think about AI. So we have an entire AI literacy lesson collection. So you'll learn all about what is AI if you want, or start to introduce that to your students with a really great video. And news in the election. So finding credible news. And then you'll see there we have a new lesson, taking a stand on cell phone bans, because that just seems to be a hot topic. And so that's a really great lesson to think about how, what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? Who does this impact when we, go through with this? And so that's a really great new lesson to share with others that might be interested. And then let's see here, digital well-being. We have AI in the election. So this is where you're going to see our deepfakes, a threat to democracy, and then teen voices, more of those videos coming out of KQED. So anybody celebrating or using any of these things this week? Let us know in the chat if you are celebrating. We'd love to hear. This next piece I wanted to include is my love for reading is, it goes deep, right? And we have lots of readers here on our call. What I did was I curated some picture books and some chapter books for students to think about reading, and then I tied it to one of our lessons. And so you'll see here for the early learners, we have Nerdy Birdie Tweets, we have Blackout, we have Dot, and then underneath I linked out to the lesson that matches up with it. So another way, you know, to include low-hanging fruit when you're talking about some of these digital citizenship topics, through the love of reading and through the love of characters. This is also a great way to send things home, like work with your librarian and have the students check out some of these books and read them at home together with their families. So you'll see here, this is more of the elementary and then upper elementary. I'm a big fan of Bad Kitty. So Bad Kitty gets a phone. So there's that. And then at the middle and high school, here are a couple of the chapter books. So responding to online hate speech, who are you online, and curated lives would put those lessons at the top with these books. Anybody have any favorite DigCit books that they have used in the classroom and tied? I know there's a lot of fake news books as well, picture books for the littlest ones, learners and above, even going into, you know, middle school and high school. This is just sort of a snapshot of all of the DigCit books out there. So I would check that out as well. All right, we are going to pause there. Does anybody have any questions? Any thoughts, any feedback? I'll put my information up here. So if you would like to email me or find me on social, you can go ahead and grab my email there. You can email me on the side. Happy to answer and support you and your school, your classroom in any way. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and pop your slides into the chat for anyone who's interested. So here is the link to those slides, which includes, you know, all of the videos that you shared today, all the links. I also shared earlier in the chat the link to the specific lesson plans on Common Sense Education's website. And so, yeah, I'm just so grateful that you were able to join us today and talk about digital citizenship. What a perfect time to talk about it with Digital Citizenship Week. And yeah, I'm curious to know, what are some things that you feel are going to be very important to talk with our students about as we move into the next month or so with, you know, the election coming up and potentially a lot of discourse happening online? What would you say are some of those like top lessons that people should be looking into for their students?
I think the biggest one, and I will put this in the chat for us, is having our take a stand thinking routine. And it's just a way to put any type of dilemma, you know, that comes upon us and working through it with your students. So again, giving everyone that space to have a perspective, to share how they feel, to understand how to argue with facts, right? And finding those facts and those sources that make it for a real case to consider, and not just arguing for the sake of arguing. And I think going back to creating those spaces where they just feel safe. I think one of the teachers that I worked with a few weeks back, you know, it's almost like what goes in our classroom stays in our classroom, in a way that like things will be shared. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to have to say, I'm sorry. And that's okay, right? If you can create a space where there is trust to have these conversations, and leave that classroom and go on. If you can do that, I feel like you've won, right? Making people feel safe. I think starting with any of those out of our lesson collection, it's going to depend on, you know, what you teach, who your students are, you know, and where you are in the moment. But most of this stuff is in terms of just understanding what's true. It starts with our current events. right? The current events that we talk about in our classrooms, whether it's an elementary classroom, middle school, or high school, I feel like understanding the sources, where it's coming from, where the bias is all foundational pieces that lead up to these bigger conversations as we approach, our high school classrooms, especially if you do teach, civics, right? Like those teachers are in it. And so, yeah, let me pull up that thinking routine real quick and we'll share it with you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, if there are any questions or comments that you'd like to leave in the chat, please do so. I did want to just do a couple things of housekeeping, but I will interrupt my housekeeping at any point if anyone has a question or comment. So just a reminder that we are live streaming and this is a recorded broadcast. And so you will be able to find this broadcast if you want to refer back to it at any point on our YouTube channel at Learning Technology Center, all one word. It'll also be available on our website, ltc.site/webinars if you're looking for it. And also a reminder that we are going to be distributing PDCs for anyone who is attending this live and signed up through StreamYard. It's important that you are registered through StreamYard. You put in your information when you join this webinar. So if you're joining us from YouTube or somewhere else, make sure that you go on our website and you register for that so that I can get you PDCs if you need them for this event. And those will be sent out to you fairly soon here, probably within the next couple days. So just check your email for that. Keep your eyes open. And yes, Jennifer, thank you for dropping that in the chat. The Take a Stand thinking routine, the link is there for that as well. So before we end today, if that is something that any of our viewers are interested in, make sure you grab that link and just pop it into a tab for yourself so that you have it for later. But otherwise, Jennifer, is there anything else? I'm not seeing any comments, questions in the chat. Is there anything else that you would like to kind of touch on today before we end?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I just want to wish you all the best. Thank you for doing what you do. We can't do this without you. And, definitely take a peek at some of those resources. Some are 5 minutes, some are 25 minutes. And so hopefully you'll find something that can benefit the conversations that are happening in your classrooms in the coming weeks and beyond.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it. And we will see everyone on the next webinar. And hopefully I'll see you soon too, Jennifer. Have a great one.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.